And this panel's topic is every trustee and regent's priority, but also greatest frustration, I think you'll find. The question of demanding accountability and innovation is very close to what ACTA is doing. Of course, the word demanding is a little stronger than we usually see in the state report cards. My system, in addition to 25 two-year colleges, has 7 four-year state universities, and I would say that their 5 C's and 2 D's on the report card would not qualify them to suit up for varsity football at any of our schools if they were graded accordingly. But what we'll do is we'll open this up with a question. Each of the panelists will go the way they want to. The target is about 10 or 15 minutes per speaker. That'll give us a little bit of time at the end. But 15 minutes will be the hard break, gentlemen, so that's when we throw the hook out. And basically, as thought starters, 2 questions. First, do you think there's a problem with higher ed accountability and innovation? You don't have to answer that yes or no, but you'll be addressing it, of course. And if yes, will you provide some insight into either the nature of the problem or what is being done or might be done to solve it? So with that as an opening, we'll start with, would you like to go first, Peter? All right. By the way, as everyone knows, we're not wasting time going over bios or introductions. Those are in your packet. Thank you.
Well, good to be here today. And Michael Crow and I, who have worked together on so many things, have sort of roughly divided things up. We expect you'll have questions on both. I'm going to deal with accountability issues, and Michael with the innovation issues, so clearly they relate. I divide accountability into 1, to the public, parents, students, and secondly, and I think this is underrated in its importance, the accountability the institution has to itself, to its staff, its faculty, etc. As to the public accountability, clearly students, appropriators, others need information. And it was in that spirit that my organization, which is basically all the big publics, working with ASCU, which are in general somewhat smaller publics, put together 4 years ago something we call the Voluntary System of Accountability, the College Portrait. It took a long time to get everybody to agree, but 2/3 of public 4-year institutions the countries have, it is to put up on their website certain information. College Portrait, some of you probably got computers now, you can pull up and see whether your school is there. 300, I say, the publics, and they need to report 3 sets of data. 1, there's a bunch of consumer data, costs, and that kind of thing in a consistent fashion. 2, it is student engagement. There's NESE and some other tests that do this. And 3, and by far the most politically complicated thing to get done, was to report up some learning outcomes, randomly testing freshmen coming in and testing them again when they graduated, looking at things like analytical skills. That data has been up now for 3 years for everything except the outcomes. Began in 2012. All members need to put up. This is consistent data. It's a big deal, actually, and it hasn't solved all the problems, but was a voluntary system that we put in our universities ourselves. Well, that helps, I think, in terms of reporting to our legislators, our parents, and other things. But really, of course, there's more data that universities, more information need to do for themselves, and I'll get to that in a minute. I think that governments have a very hard time doing this. Almost inevitably, they ask for a bunch of information that's really not pertinent. Department of Education gets reams of information from our universities every year. Nobody looks at it. And I tend to think that, frankly, from a governmental point of view of accountability of the universities to the government and all that they may represent, is basically we ought to be interested in post-education employment data, and which we can't get on our own, by the way, because it isn't sufficiently complete. You need help with privacy safeguards from Social Security, IRS, or somebody. Employment data, we need, I think completion rates is a good thing for the public, for government perhaps to ask for, but frankly they've got to revise the current system, which doesn't count students coming in and leaving, transiting in and out. We need a national unit record system. And third, a good barometer of quality is the student loan default rates for student loans. So as I look at what data I would be interested in terms of public policy that has some reflection upon quality of education, its employment, its graduation rates, and its default rates. Now, to make that work, you know, I'm saying, okay, there's a bunch of voluntary stuff that we should do, and some of us are. And what the government should be working at are these other measurements. I think there's a matter of disclosure. For student loans, it's a matter of doing a much better job of controlling what they have. I mean, the student loan portfolio over about 15 years has doubled to $100 billion a year. Pell has doubled to $38 billion since 2008. A lot of this, and some of it is nonprofits. 25% of the Pell increase is for-profits, and we've got lots of problems out there. And the Department of Education makes determinations on eligibility of institutions to participate in Pell and student loans. The system doesn't work. It's gamed. There are 4,000 Pell student loan recipient institutions. I think 3 were declared ineligible last year. It is a system that does not work. Congress has tried to reform it, effective in a couple changes a couple years from now. Almost everybody is playing that's in that business is playing to game that one too. So I would argue institutions need to do some things voluntarily. Government doesn't do it right, particularly the Department of Education. And when the states do it, they tend to get all twisted up and in the detail and miss the main point. Whereas again, I say that graduation rates, employment rates, default rates are a good place for the public to start. Now let me spend a little more time on what I think is an under-discussed topic, and that is accountability to a university community of what it does. The voluntary system of accountability that we put together was at least half for those purposes. Universities, it's not just the president, the provost, it's the faculty, it's the staff, it's of course the students, but the people that are there more or less permanently should have a way to measure how they're doing vis-a-vis their mission, their goals, and it ought to be year over year or time period over time period. Otherwise, how do you know whether you've improved? It's not good enough to have great aspirations. You need to have some way to measure that. And this, the college portrait was in some important part to try to do that. Now, the college portrait has relatively few items that everybody is commonly reporting, and that's appropriate because institutions vary. What are the missions or the sub-missions? Institutions need to decide that. Michigan State, where I was president, has different missions than a lot of other places. Not just community college differences, but between us and the University of Michigan, for example. Institutions need to struggle with what they really want to be and do, and then measure it against it. Now, I would argue that, in fact, universities are by and large ill-equipped to do this. They're ill-equipped, and I see some changes, but I'm anxious to see a lot more. We're ill-equipped because we basically don't have a cost accounting system. I came to Michigan State as an executive vice president of Bank of America, and I was all set. I'm a finance guy in part. I was all set to run my fingers through the data and make comparisons. Well, it's just not there. And it's not there, it's not that these are incompetent people, contrary, very bright. It's not there because it's hard to do and the culture hasn't required it. Virtually nobody knows what it costs to educate a PhD in physics versus math or versus anything. And because there's so many subjective judgments and allocations we haven't made, we don't really want to stand up and say to anybody, including ourselves, that it costs more to educate a mechanical engineer than it does a history major. We charge them all more or less the same tuition, a little more fees sometimes as engineers, but if you can't decide what it costs you, even if part of the allocations are subjective, how do you make the decisions as to whether or not you ought to do it, whether you ought to change it, and how to make it work? And a companion to that is you need to have data-based decision-making or informed decision-making. Data doesn't drive all decisions. It never has and shouldn't. But you ought, if you have good data and outcomes and cost, then you can begin to make decisions about how to allocate the money, what to do. We know from a lot of experience, I mean, it isn't necessarily always politically correct to talk about business experience, but I think universities aren't businesses. They have different missions and so forth. But there are some business tools that can be effective. And we know, going back to Deming's work in Japan, looking at the Japanese automobile industry, where they looked at cost and quality together and just beat the pants off the U.S. automobile industry until the U.S. automobile industry began, not fully, to incorporate this. We know from around the world that driving cost and quality together and having the tools to do that is the way to get the way that there have been major shifts in sectors, in industries around the world for the last 20, 30 years. The only other reason there was a major shift was major reorganizations. Michael will talk about some of what he's done his university, or major new technology. Other than that, it's been these tools of driving cost and quality together with the information to do it. So, in summary, I think that there's no question public institutions, particularly, and privates will make their own decisions, but we publics think we must be accountable. Where we have FOIA, I felt I was in the fishbowl the full 11 years I was at Michigan State, and I think that's appropriate. We must be accountable. We need to be sure that we get the government to ask for the right things if we can. We need to, on our own, report proper things beyond that, and we need to, on our own, drive our own internal system of self-improvement and accountability. And the U.S. government is not doing a good job on monitoring Pell and student loan money. That's a whole broader discussion I'd love to have, but it's great to see you today. Thank you. By the way, Michael does this. He's going to tell you about all the things he's done, but they're true, and they're wonderful. They're wonderful.
So thank you, Peter. Let me start by saying thank you for the invitation, but also I come to you wearing, I put on this suit for you guys. I took off my battle utilities coming in from Phoenix. Phoenix is, Arizona is, as are many places in the United States, the front line of whether or not our country will be successful. It's a rapidly growing, rapidly diversifying place filled with so much social complexity that it's unbelievable, literally unbelievable. How do we move forward in a place that has grown tenfold since 1950? Because the models that we have to go forward for a public university are wholly inadequate for the future. They are not worthless, but virtually worthless. The United States in 1950 had 150 million people. We were first in everything. We now have 310 million people. We're no longer first in everything. We are at the same time more diverse, you know all this, more globalized. Things are moving faster, and I think we've grown in many ways. I don't really know what the reason for this is, confused about how to move forward. You can only move forward in a culture as complex and as large and as diverse as ours through innovation. The same models being repeated over and over in the production of what I call generic state universities, GSUs. The generic state university model is not working. It has a declining graduation rate, a higher cost basis, all the things that you guys were talking about earlier today. And it's one thing to sort of say that. Okay, got it. So what? You know it. What are you doing about it? Not you. What are we doing about it? So I want to give you a story about innovation. The public university, which I serve the people of Arizona as the leader of, has 60,000 undergraduates and 15,000 graduate students operating in 15 colleges in a 20-mile circle in the center of a city of 4 million people called Phoenix. Third most populated county in the United States. No longer Caucasians as the majority of births, assumed to be a non-majority location in the way that the demographics are shifting. So just put that into your background. 2002, I was appointed president of the university in July. I'd spent 12 years prior to that at Columbia University as one of the provosts there and as the science and technology professor in the School of International and Public Affairs. I went to Arizona because America cannot be successful with the base institutions that exist. There's no scalability and no replicability of elite private universities. I was a trustee of Bowdoin College for many years in Brunswick, Maine also. There's no replicability of Bowdoin College. And I agree with the terms and the concepts and the others talking about too many kids going to college and too many kids this and too many kids that. How about even producing the number that we need, much less trying to get more kids to go? So here's what we began doing in 2002. The total re-engineering of the idea of the public university. Actually, we call this idea, and you can find it on our website, called the New American University. You could have called it the Old Public University. You could have called it what a public university is supposed to do. You could have called it anything. We decided to call it the New American University because it meant we had to build a new kind of university, a new kind of public institution. That started with a new vision. The university will not measure itself based on exclusion. It'll measure itself based on success of the students that attend. It will not measure itself based on how good it is by who it leaves out, but by what it is able to achieve with students qualified to do university level work. We now have a status hierarchy in the United States for universities, public and private, which is based on exclusion. The more exclusionary the institution, the better it is by its exclusion. That will not get us to where we need to go. The second element of that vision is that the institution would be committed to its community and to its success. And the third is that it would be built on innovation and measure its progress. To implement its vision, we work to establish a series of new aspirations. That is genetic engineering of the institution itself. How do you restructure the fundamental fabric in which the university actually works? We outlined 8 design aspirations. We don't have time today to go through all 8. We've raised billions of dollars from private sources, foundations, and others to advance these 8 aspirations, but just 2. Social transformation is one. You can't see K through 12 collapsing around you, be a producer of 1,600 certified teachers per year, as we are, and not be responsible for the negative outcome. You cannot. You cannot alter the institution and the way that it operates unless you own the outcome. We completely eliminated our College of Education, restructured it down to its roots, moved 45 faculty members out of that unit, re-engineered it to focus only on teachers and teacher production, re-engineered it with private philanthropy to advance through a series of innovations, a series of tracking mechanisms for how our teachers were actually performing in the market, and have altered the structure. So we get tired of people complaining about colleges of education. Find presidents of universities that will change them. Until you do that, nothing will happen. Social transformation is one of our objectives. Social transformation is derivative of educational success, beginning at K through 12. Ultimately, then, with more kids going into trades, more kids going into community colleges, more kids being trained to be auto mechanics and so forth and so on, they've got to be able to do that. K through 12 is barely producing that. Social transformation requires successful K through 12. Successful K through 12 requires a restructuring and a rethinking of what universities do to produce teachers. We raised private philanthropy. We had launched a series of initiatives. We married our curricular design activities with Teach for America. We altered our entire, we had faculty that would resign over that. We said goodbye. Social transformation is the objective. Another aspiration is value entrepreneurship. I'm only giving you 2 of the 8 aspirations and 1 example in each, just to give you a sense of the process that we've been under. Value entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship at many colleges and universities is a dirty word. Don't know where it became a dirty word or how it became a dirty word, but that's idiotic. And so we have altered the nature of entrepreneurial education, raised tens of millions of dollars from private philanthropy, private citizens, and others to advance an entrepreneurship learning experience in all 15 of our colleges: nursing, journalism, teaching, engineering, and business, where you would normally expect it, but the sciences, the arts, and elsewhere. We now have over 11,000 students engaged last semester in entrepreneurial learning and activities. Unbelievable scale, unbelievable numbers, unbelievable outcomes. The method for altering the performance of a public university is to alter the structure of the public university, to alter the aspirations of the public university, to alter the design and the purpose of the public university, all of which we have undertaken. The third level of implementation of this change is what we call new focus. Most public universities, my Columbia University, where I grew up as a faculty member, are faculty-centric. Okay, that's fine for a private university. You want to be faculty-centric, and your trustees want to build a faculty-centric university built around the faculty and decisions made by the faculty and for the faculty and so forth, and by the faculty. That's fine, but not a public university. A public university must be student-centric. It must be community-centric after that. And the faculty are there to serve those students and to serve those communities, and so we have altered that focus. All measurements of success that are primary to the decisions that we make are derivative of our students and our students' ability to be successful. Now, what's the process for doing this? The process for us is innovation. And the innovation is focused on learning outcomes. It's a very, very difficult process. I could regale you with story after story after story of what 9.5 years in this job have entailed in terms of making these kinds of changes. But we're after the following objective: more learning outcomes at higher level for more people at a lower cost. And so when you make that your objective, it actually turns out you can make progress toward that objective. So I'm going to close with just rattling off some of the things that we've been able to do through making innovation at the institution level. You can think about innovation at levels above the institution. It's not going to work. You can incentivize institutions to innovate. You can punish them for not innovating. You cannot make them innovate. They have to figure it out on their own. Here's some of the things that we've been able to do. We eliminated 50 academic units and restructured them into units that actually make sense, not social constructs that someone inherited that no one even knows what they mean. We reduced $200 million in public support since April of 2009, $200 million in public support for our university alone due to the Great Recession that we're in. Okay, well, we're past it, took care of it, moved past it, innovated around it, moved in different directions. We've done $2.7 billion of new capital investment, only 15% financed by the state of Arizona, the rest financed by partnerships. We've taken on 25,000 more students to our base population while tripling our research activities and advancing the university as a more successful research enterprise with no increase in our faculty size. Now, how do you do that? Only one word: innovate, innovate, innovate in everything, in curriculum, in structure, in pedagogy, in design, in timing, in tools, in organization, in structure, in everything. We doubled the number of STEM majors, science, technology, engineering, and math, since 2002. We built a second engineering school built around actually solving problems rather than just studying theoretically. We now have more than 10,000 students in those 2 schools of engineering that are advancing in new ways. We eliminated all engineering departments and created problem-oriented engineering schools, theme-oriented engineering schools. By the way, the faculty endorsed all the things that I'm talking about. We've increased the number of graduates by 1,000 graduates per year while decreasing cost. Our cost to produce a graduate, including our losses. So our graduation rate's underreported in your little books right now because it's old data. It's going up rapidly. We've greatly increased our freshman retention rate. We do very well in our increase rates. But 1,000 new graduates per year, a decreasing cost per graduate. So our cost per graduate now, all in, including our losses, is $57,000. The State University of New Jersey, under Governor Christie at Rutgers, is at $125,000 per graduate, including his losses. We're lowering that cost. We believe we'll have that cost down to below $50,000 in the high 40s as our graduation rate goes up and as our performance goes up. We're the #1 community college transfer university in the United States with huge success, 8,000 transfer students in the last semester. That means we have to be engaged with the right students at the community colleges to be able to move them forward. We measure everything, we innovate everything, and I'm just reporting to you from the front line out there in the frontier of the United States known as Arizona. Thank you.
Wow. The Minnesota State College and University system is the big system in Minnesota. Most people have heard about the University of Minnesota. They're not aware that that's the little system. They have about 83,000 full-time equivalent. We have about 230,000 full-time equivalent. But the structure of the system, there are 430 headcount students. Obviously, with those kinds of numbers, we have a large number of part-time students, and we educate them on 54 campuses in 47 cities. We have 25 two-year colleges. Some are combinations of colleges under a single leadership, so there's actually more buildings and more facilities in that, and 7 four-year universities. So that's the configuration. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about some of the things that are happening to, I think, make this a cutting-edge institution, and as a trustee, 5-year trustee, I would say I think we're on the verge of greatness, and I'll tell you why I think that. One of the things I'll refer to in a minute is the campus service cooperative that has just recently been formed, and I'll tell you how I think that will evolve. There's a number of things that have gotten us on the road to making some changes. One of those are the same things that Arizona State University has dealt with, specifically the taxpayer funding. If you go back just 10 years ago, when 3 systems, a technical college, a community college, and a university system were put together in a single system, there was great hopes by the legislature the huge efficiencies would come out of this. But there was also a lot of political pressure. Every congressional district, every state senate district was very concerned about closing a campus, reducing a campus, all of these. And so what could have resulted in elimination of duplicate majors and programs and that type of thing came rather slowly. But during that period of about 10 years, a couple other things happened. One thing that happened is we had a governor who, named Tim Pawlenty, who decided to push a lot on changing higher education. And a whole bunch of trustees came in under his appointment and were confirmed by the Senate. And we began pushing and arguing about some of the things that maybe could be done differently. Starting about 5 years ago, a number of things started taking place. So just to show that we weren't completely without some kind of an action. One of the things we did, for example, is took advantage of obvious opportunities to consolidate operations. Bemidji State University, Dr. Polikoff talked about one of our 4-year universities. We consolidated that with the 2-year technical college campus in the same general community. So now a single president, a single oversight group, some technology support, all of those things immediately were consolidated there. We had 5 small 2-year colleges up in what we call the Iron Range, way up north near the Canadian border. We consolidated all of those under a single president, and something called the Northeast Education District. And so those 5 campuses are still in existence, but each one is headed now by a dean, and there has been some attempt in those communities also to eliminate the duplicate majors that would have existed under the old system. As chair of the audit committee, one of the things that was an ongoing challenge for us is a barrage of audits that would be brought in and dropped on the audit committee's desk about this time of year. And you can imagine, with all of these campuses, what we had. And one of the things we had tried to do, and was being successful, is we used a sampling method for our audit policy. Now, every school that was large enough to have a major impact on the materiality of the system was given a full outside audit, financial audit. That included all 7 of our 4-year universities. However, we also have some big 2-year colleges, some with 18,000 students, that type of thing, very large ones in the metropolitan area, and those were added. We now have 13 colleges that are getting a financial audit every single year, but remember, that's 13 out of about 38. In addition to that, we do some occasional sampling and that type of thing of operational controls. And what we conclude from that was a model that based upon the number of errors we saw in operating processes or cash handling or purchasing or calculation of faculty leaves, those kinds of things that those of you, if you've been close to those who know are so difficult, student load calculations, reporting to the federal government on some of the things that we must report on. When we found numerous errors in those areas, we assumed that it was a system-wide problem, and the audit committee reporting out to the Board of Trustees basically had the system-level finance staff conduct training system-wide, just assuming the problem existed everywhere. So errors on single campuses resulted in training and reaffirmation of those as challenges system-wide. And so training was a big part of this. But the problem was some of our campuses were so small that the person was basically a bookkeeper that was responsible for the financial performance of the campus. So we're talking about some very rural colleges with just 2,500 students. And this person oftentimes would report to a business manager or report to a provost. But generally speaking, if a person who is expert on student loans, for example, went on vacation, there was no backup till that person returned, or the person that tried to fill the gap was not really skilled enough to do it. Some of these positions are high demand. These are complicated jobs. We'd lose one of these people, we'd find a campus, you see, without somebody who could do the particular type of work. This is not a unique situation to us. Every small college, every rural community college probably has the same kind of a challenge. And as chair of the audit committee, one of the things that was driving me personally nuts was the fact that this lack of depth was resulting in a lack of quality and oversight and training. So one of the things we started talking about was what can we do to consolidate some of these functions that are not absolutely essential to delivery of the education mission in the classroom. In other words, can we separate those things where the goal can be the cheapest way possible, least expensive way possible, and the most efficient way possible without disrupting the education mission of the system, and after all, shouldn't that be our goal? Right in the middle of this, a new legislature came in and basically said that the trustees in allocating funds among colleges and closing programs would give the highest priority to those majors and programs that had the greatest impact on the economic performance of the state of Minnesota. So technical education by statute now, in our most recent funding, cannot be, will do that too. That now has to be the priority. Doesn't mean you can't have history, doesn't mean you can't have English, but it means, by the way, if you're choosing between having one or the other, preference will be given to those that are most directly related to economic proportion. I think this goes right to the heart of a very important issue, and in my view, as a trustee, and I've been called the curmudgeon trustee a couple times, in my view, we need to remember as regents and as trustees, we have contractual relationships with lots of people, and we have social relationships with lots of people, and we have communication responsibilities that are assigned to us with lots of people, but we are fiduciaries only to those outside the system. Only to those outside the system. And that is the highest responsibility, and that exists legally as well as any other way. And what that means is students, just like if you're on the board of directors of Best Buy, your customers are people outside your business, students certainly fall in that category, but so do the taxpayers and so do the others of the state of Minnesota. What we've done is some clever things in attempting to carry this out. We've established centers of excellence. These centers of excellence have done things like identify the business needs of the community. We have lots of machinists, for example, very, very bright people. They've been a machinist for, let's say, 2 years. But now they're moving into a management situation. But to be in a management situation, they find that that their associate degree and a science degree in machining doesn't really prepare them. But it's absolutely daunting to think about going back at age 35 perhaps and starting all over again on a 4-year college degree working part-time. What we've done is create things like an associate degree in applied engineering, where we treat the 2 years of technical education as the elective group, whatever, and basically in 2 additional years, they still have to have the rudimentary engineering courses. We're able to make engineers who are not capable of doing research, but they're very capable of working with a factory general manager in terms of working with vendors, placing of equipment, doing all the statistical measurements that are so important in the manufacturing process. So a number of those things are taking place. But the question about what were we going to do about these small campuses and these kinds of things, and of course the faculty pushback, as you can imagine, has evolved into something more than that. And about 2 years ago, we came up with a decision that we would consolidate a couple things. And the first step on that is we had 2 campuses that were doing particularly poorly on their oversight of financial issues. And basically, as chair of the audit committee, we required those 2 presidents to come in and report back to us specifically on what they were going to be doing by time certain, both of which were before their contracts expired, by the way. And all of our presidents report to the Board of Trustees. There are no intermediate boards, although we do have a chancellor, we do have a system-level staff that coordinates that kind of work. And at the end of those 2 presentations, where we had a great deal of interest in solving the problems quickly, they were also encouraged to work on a consolidated basis with their administrative functions, and that happened almost immediately. At the same time, we brought in and hired a new chancellor, and the new chancellor has made it clear that we should be moving with all vigor to consolidate as many of these functions as possible. What's on the back of what you have in front of you here, looking at it vertically, is the identification of all of our different institutions. Somewhere in the middle, you'll see Office of the Chancellor. That's a system-level staff, 300-400 people. And if you go down the middle there, you can see that there are green marks in all of those, which means the system level started off with the first consolidation of these functions. And by consolidation of functions, I don't mean we took the student loan program or the payroll handling program and created an office in the system. What we did is we located the best current functional unit at handling payroll, for example, in our university, and that became the center where the people doing that work now were doing it system-wide. In some functions that are large enough, we have maybe 2 campuses doing it for the whole system. So we did not bring these people in and consolidate them as a large centralized administrative unit. They're all out here. And looking along the list here, you can see the first group that our president said of activities that ought to be looked at for consolidation, where they think they can still carry out their education mission, but where significant costs and efficiency can be done, are listed down here. This is the standing at this point, basically in October. You can see we're really just getting started, but I'll tell you there's been clear direction at board meetings, all of which are public, of course, that it won't be very long until some of these things will be mandated as requirements for all of our presidents. And in addition to that, our new chancellor has made public announcements that a couple other things are going to move this out of just the administrative functional area into the actual education environment. Currently, each of our campuses trains their own faculty for online education. And the argument has been, gee, you have to be where the teacher is. Well, online education is the teachers aren't where the students are. And if you look at the University of Phoenix or Capella University, you learn to teach an online course by taking an online course. So there's absolutely no reason why centralizing online education couldn't bring the very best training program in the system online for everybody and have them take that course online and stay at the same physical campus they're at and conduct that activity. We've made progress with online education. I'm not trying to imply to you that we're stumbling along. This semester, we have 85,000 students taking at least 1 class online. So it's already a big operation. But there's huge difference in terms of the scope of technology, the scope of training that's taking place, and whatever. The chancellor, our new chancellor, has also implied that it seems logical to him that the online courses would benefit from having some similarity between how each professor in the online course was teaching the course. And as a result of that, he's indicating that there probably ought to be some consolidation of the very best minds, so that if we have 400 courses in rhetoric and composition taking place as a freshman writing course, it not to be drafted by 250 different professors. And so some of the core courses would basically have their syllabi and their grading and their evaluation methods agreed upon and conducted system-wide. Well, it doesn't take much insight to see that there's going to be really substantial things taking place at MnSCU other than just the administrative functions. My feeling is that within the next several years, just about everything that's not necessary to the classroom experience will be centralized in these administrative functions, although they won't be in one great big office in St. Paul. And I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more consolidation in terms of how we measure quality and what's in a course and what a vigorous educational experience looks like. The last point I'll make is a very big one politically, and most of the people in this room are very aware of the political pressures, I think, on higher education. One issue for us is how to structure the governance of the cooperative. My argument has been, and I have some experience in the past from establishing cooperatives, my argument has been that the colleges that are getting the service ought to be governing the cooperative. Now, all the presidents work for the Board of Trustees anyway in the system because they're not separate corporations. But what we're saying with that is the people that will hear the complaints from the students about how well things are handled or will be online for errors and accuracy taking place, if they're supervising the cooperative, they'll be able to bring pressure on these work units to satisfy them. The second thing is by funding through the colleges rather than the system sending money to some kind of a service cooperative, we're eliminating the idea that the system level budget, the centralized non-education budget, if you will, has grown much bigger at the expense of the colleges. And the colleges, of course, are also in a situation where they're going to be demanding dollar efficiency because every dollar that is saved there will be left over for them to apply towards their college and classroom missions. The initial discussion is basically a leadership group made up of the presidents as they're participating in this. My feeling is it'll be much more formalized. I've suggested that it be a Minnesota Cooperative Corporation. There's some issues with that for a public university system owning a corporation like that, but as a nonprofit that might be able to be done. That would allow also for some reserve funds to be held there, the cooperative to charge a little bit more for the work initially than it actually costs, so that there's a reserve of funds that are set aside for upgrading technology and doing those kinds of things. So it's a new approach. I know of no other model like this that's taking place. For a system with this many campuses, it's the right model for us, and I think it shows the flexibility we have in dealing with the problems. And that's what we're doing in MnSCU. We have about 5 minutes, and we'll turn it over, gentlemen, for questions from anybody, or you have follow-up questions, comments? Okay, questions? Yes.
Roger Ream. I had a question for President Crow. There's a metaphorical photo going around now of the Occupy Wall Street crowd, which I think is photoshopped of a young woman holding a sign saying, for $96,000, I got a BA in Hispanic, transgender, gay and lesbian studies, and I can't find work. And you touched on the fact that despite the fact that enrollments have doubled in the last 20, 25 years, the number of students in the STEM majors of science, technology, engineering, and math has been flat. It's majors in visual and performing arts, psychology, and other such fields that have been increasing dramatically. How were you able to double the number of majors in those areas?
One, we don't pay much attention to national anecdotes of kind of craziness that's out there. You know, when they say it can't be done or kids don't want to learn this and kids don't want to learn that, I mean, those are basically the blather of fools. It turns out that what kids really want is they want to do something exciting. So we made it more exciting. We looked at our own pedagogy. We took geology, astronomy, I'll just give you one example. We took geology, astronomy, astrophysics, and astrobiology, and we said, you people are all sitting around doing about the same thing. You're all exploring either the Earth or space. We brought that all together. We created the School of Earth and Space Exploration. That all of a sudden then took on a curricular element to it. We then altered the pedagogical methodology through which the science teachers are actually advancing. We then used innovation in physics and innovation in chemistry. We have 1,200 chemistry majors, 2,700 biology majors, 600 math majors, And these are all doubles and triples of the numbers that we had because we went in and looked at what the root of the problem was. The root of the problem wasn't the kids. It wasn't the attractiveness of the salaries. The kids have no idea what any of that means. It was basically the fact that it was boring and uninteresting in the way that it was being presented. It had no connection to reality, or insufficient connection to reality. So we made those alterations, and that has had a significant impact. In just the biological sciences alone, we had faculty compartmentalized into 3 historical constructs of biology, all fighting each other, wasting everyone's time, energy, and money, being allowed to go on for decades and decades. We said, stop. You have 60 days to design a new design, or we're moving on without you on a new structure. They took that, they brought that together, they came up with a new design, we invested in the new design, we got dramatically improved performance, dramatic increases in students coming in. So the point in short form is that it's about how you do it inside the individual institutions.
Back here?
President Crow, the concept of faculty tenure has not been touched on all morning. I'd be very interested in your view on faculty tenure generally in the United States, and also what's the policy at Arizona State?
So tenure is a very limited thing that somehow has been distorted into a be-all and an end-all for everything. Tenure is the ability for a faculty member to express their academic views without fear of retribution for their academic views. It gives you no license in any other space. And so we implement tenure because it's actually necessary to the way knowledge advances. Knowledge advances because Peter knows that my theory in economics is bad and he's going to blow mine up. If I have some way to get at him before he can blow my theory up, then my theory doesn't move forward. His theory doesn't move forward. And
But
so
I shouldn't be fired in the meantime.
you shouldn't be fired along the way for that, and there's plenty of examples where that has happened. So we have limited the concept of tenure to that. We have post-tenure review, which we implement at our school. We don't announce every tenured faculty member that we've fired, but there have been many. And I've had my rear end in the federal district court witness chair on several occasions defending our position to be able to do that, and none of those individuals have won. And because they don't have a case. And so the case is you must perform. Tenure is your right to carry your ideas forward that you earn along the way and is granted. Now, is it the best model ever created? No, because it's so distorted everywhere. And so that's my general view. I don't know if Peter has a broader view.
I think that post-tenure review, clarifying what tenure is about, those are very important, and having a process that's timely but clear. But I think that the public sometimes overdoes this as the bugaboo of everything. As you see, Michael, who's truly done amazing things there, has been able to do them in the context of a tenure process, of a tenure structure.
With faculty engagement,
Yeah,
with
I
faculty
mean,
participation.
If you can have a big vision that's important to people, the way Michael has laid this out, people want to be part of successful things. Not everybody's going to say this is awful. Contrary.
Yes. So we also had this classic thing about the academic senate considered the matter, 90 members were for it and 1 was against, therefore the matter fails. I mean, hogwash.
This is not the UN.
This isn't how it works. It's like we're going to get everybody together. If you don't want to be a part of it, we'll get you another job doing something else. And so it's not meant to be harsh. It's meant to be, we are moving this bus forward because we are here to serve these students. If you don't want to teach these students, if you don't want to serve these students, go to a school that doesn't have that as an objective, because this is our objective here. And what we have been able to do, even through the darkest days of the recession when I had to furlough 14,000 people, we didn't go on furlough. Furlough means not open. We worked without pay. So the faculty made those decisions on their own because we were able to alter the purpose of the institution. The purpose of the institution isn't to serve themselves. The purpose is these kids that are lining up at our door, 10,000 freshmen, 8,000 transfer students, 18,000 new kids showed up just a few weeks ago in August. What are you going to do with them? You're going to whine to them? You know, your job is to get them ready to move forward. We have been able to successfully do that. We're not the only ones that have done that, but we've been able to do that at a large scale.
How are we doing time-wise? Time for a couple more questions? Two more questions, okay.
Thank you. I'm Noah Manis. I'm a one-time faculty staffer. My question for President Crow, not to put too fine a point in, your institution has a good reputation as a pretty hard partying sort of school. How do you address some of the social problems that Dr. Foley talked about in his speech before, and making your classes interesting to students on Fridays and on Monday mornings?
Yeah, so we don't have the Friday and Monday problems because we have too many kids, too many students, too many pathways, too many options. The party school thing, you're not even old enough to know what that legend is derivative of. You just inherited that from someone else in the classification of schools according to some social hierarchy, which is that there's serious schools and not serious schools, and those are the not serious schools. So in my first 2 months in office, I had the occasion to meet with the publisher of the Arizona Republic after running a front-page article on that kind of nomenclature. So we had sent them just a couple of weeks before that the ranking by one of the magazines, Newsweek or Time, that we were one of the up-and-coming hot schools moving in the right direction and so forth. And they chose to run a completely falsely based ranking of being one of the Playboy party schools by ranking. We then disaggregated the data on which the Playboy rankings were made. They happened to be correlated with size. Guess what? We're a large university. We're high on that list. We then disaggregated the data even further and then took the data on behavior of students at major public universities, all public universities, in terms of alcohol problems, arrests, and so forth. We're in the bottom quartile of those schools. And so there's all kinds of myths and legends that are out there. We like to go like right at them, right in your face. So yes, we have a lot of students, and yes, we have a lot of issues, and yes, we confront every problem that our society has with alcohol and other substance abuse issues. I won't even begin to walk you through what those issues and those problems are. And we've done a very effective job of being able to manage them with 60,000 undergraduates all living in close proximity to each other. But from a reputational perspective, we find it very difficult to advance on the reputational hierarchy because it's locked in, and it's in a lock-in mode. And so what we've decided is to forget all that. We were very happy that the Wall Street Journal last fall ranked universities according to 500 corporations ranking the quality of the graduates prepared for work in those corporations. We were 5th on that list. Pennsylvania State University was first. Right above us was Georgia Tech. That means at least, so I'm using that as one of 150 indicators. Michigan State was very high on that list also. One of 150 indicators of outcomes. Judge us based on our outcomes, not on the myths of our behavior. Judge us based on our outcomes, not on the fact that we have, the most fantastic SAT scores in the world. SAT scores predict first-year college performance. So
I really just go back to things like how are you coming on your graduation rates or your completion rates? How are you coming on a number of other measurements? And frankly, if you've grown as my school has, you have to have classes on Fridays and Monday mornings and labs at night. I bet you have a bunch of laboratory courses at night.
We have classes 6 days a week.
Okay, this is and this over time, at Michigan State, I had 45,000 students. There's no way there's any problems, and every year you get a whole bunch more students, even if you educated somebody before. So what you have to do is just focus on the key things, and I think you're doing it.
Yeah, I'll say that. Let me just add one point. It's our objective. So we have goals, and so our goal is we take a broad cross-section of students. We have a very diverse student body. We have 1/2 the median income of the undergraduate class at the University of Florida. So just give you some sense of our economic diversity. And so we have a broader cross-section of economic diversity at the institution, which is very challenging in terms of moving towards graduation. Our objectives are that we will attain the same output functions as every highly selective public university that's out there, period, bar none. We have already, in 150 of those indicators, we're already in the top 15 of all public institutions in half of those indicators. And we're crashing on the others because we're using innovation and technology to demonstrate how it works. Now, I agree with the earlier comments from the Tidewater region of Virginia about getting the right kid and the right kid in college, and every kid doesn't have to go to college. I understand that. I get that. It's not about that. We're talking about, someone said earlier, and it's really important, graduating the kids that did make it, graduating the kids that are on the right track. We have to figure out how to do that. And public universities aren't doing that. The average graduation rate is about 38% right now and going down steeply.
Well, it depends about you.
Yes, but I'm talking across the whole country.
But, I think that one last comment about what Mike has done and others might do is that he was able to make these huge changes in Arizona without a faculty vote of no confidence. I don't think we had.
I had some meetings with people that wanted to do it, and I said, lay down your best thing, throw down.
Right. So in other words, all these changes, well, a fair question for an audience like this is, okay, how were you able, because these things are real. I mean, these are measurable changes in structure and outcomes. Well, in my view, and I don't, Mike, whether I think you would agree with this, my view is it was a combination of a set of big visions and engagement of the community,
Yep.
who produced the big visions, and people want to do good things. People want to be part of something big,
Including faculty.
yeah, absolutely. Well, they certainly as much as anybody. I think we're done. You're going to kick us out, aren't you?
I think the wrap-up questions will replace the last question. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
And if I may say thank you to our wonderful panelists, I want to say first that your Board of Trustees, President Crow, was mighty wonderful when they hired you, and that's exactly the kind of decision that more boards need to be making. I should also urge you to look at page 30 in your Intelligent Donors Guide, which is in your packet, because that features some of the excellent things that President Crow has done with teacher education. Thanks also to Peter McPherson, because as you know, ACTA has partnered with his organization to put the voluntary system of accountability on our website. What will they learn?
That was we are good partners in this, and we're so pleased to be able to work together with you.
So we are delighted to be working with him on that. And then I think Jim Van Houten, again, represents the kind of engaged trustees that ACTA is working very hard to serve as a resource. And if you have not read already, please read the report card that ACTA did about the Minnesota public schools and colleges. I think that it was designed to motivate trustees to do many of the things that Jim has been doing. So we're pleased to see that succeeding. Finally, we will have boxed lunches for everyone. You can get them in the next room. We urge you to eat them in here. You can go out on the patio as well, but we will start very promptly at 1 p.m. with our colloquy with Larry Summers and Daniel Devise. So again, thank you.